All right, now it's possible I overreached a little bit with this session title. This may not be totally sexy. And it's a little awkward for me because I'm an introvert by nature. And so for me to be promoting, more risky titles is a little awkward for me to begin with. I also have a weakness for Mexican food. And I haven't had lunch. And so this is doubly difficult now for me. But the genesis of the title is, wanting to come up with a phrase that spoke to search marketing. And I got this idea from watching that movie, The Social Network, about Zuckerberg and Facebook and all that. And there's that sort of classic line, $1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? $1 billion, right? Well, we can't have that. Google's already a multi-billion-dollar company. It's taken from us. But what is sexy? What's cool in search marketing? What would that look like? And I finally figured it out. You know what would be really cool? Is if Google said you couldn't spend anymore. That would be really cool if we could get that. I'm just joking with my friends from Google. We love Google, and they got it started for us years and years ago. And with the help of the Wayback Machine, we pulled up some of Google's old marketing materials promoting their new advertising concept. Who was around back then? Who was doing Google ad buys before AdWords, all that stuff? A few people. Okay, I was around then, and it was great. I mean, if you knew what you were doing, there were such pricing inefficiencies, you could make money hand over fist for your companies, for your clients, and that went on for a number of years. But it's shocking to me how far we've come and how fast. Just looking at some of these materials, and I don't know if you can read it on the screen, but they're bragging about how they get 13 million searches. 13 million! Yeah, let us help our savvy internet searchers find you. Right? The ad will look like this. They're advertising for jobs at Google. Remember when Google had to advertise, for job listings? But it was a lot of fun, and we were really, those of us who got into it early just had a green field, and it was very exciting. You could make huge gains for your companies, for your clients at the time. But more recently, search has become more of a game of small ball, where we're fighting over incremental gains all the time. And we've reached the point of diminishing returns with most campaigns. They've reached some level of maturity. I'm excited to hear some of the discussions today about the importance of creative. The gentleman from Boost this morning talking about the importance of ad creative and how that can actually provide some real game-changing returns for you. But for the most part, the mechanics of search haven't changed that much, and you're not going to move the needle that much. Do I need to stand still? All right. You can move around. Yeah, all right. Can you hear me now? So everyone's efforts are focused here sort of out on the curve, and I'm sure that all the quants will argue with me about the shape of the curve later at dinner. But the idea here is that we're battling with each other for placement on a keyword by keyword level here and there, sometimes number 1, number 2, 3, and so on. But we're all staying within this narrow band of performance for the most part and playing small ball. So the challenge then is how you really move the needle for a mature, well-optimized search campaign. And in our view, it's to increase the conversion rate. That's not rocket science. That's not going to shock anybody. We are looking at doing it via landing page optimization, but we're looking at taking that to a new level, what we call landing experience optimization. You're probably familiar with landing page optimization. Someone searches for product A, you give them an ad that says, we got product A, it's great, free shipping. You link them to a landing page that says, product A, here's a picture of product A, here are the benefits of product A, here's some social proof about why product A is awesome, buy now, right? That's landing page optimization in a nutshell. You do it, you see some gains in conversion and ROI. And on average, those companies that have done what we call best practice landing page optimization may have gotten to about a 20% lift, which is nothing to sneeze at. But it'll only get you so far, that best practice landing page optimization. So we're advocating playing a different game with what we call LXO, landing experience optimization. I'll define what that is coming up. And we're seeing gains in the 50% and up arena. And when you can do that, that changes the economics pretty dramatically, obviously, of your search campaigns. And you can start to tap into pools of volume that you couldn't afford to play in previously. And it is extremely powerful when you can start to do that. I'll show you some real-world examples coming up here. But think about landing experience optimization as being the ability to provide that optimal user experience for each of your key visitor segments. And I was fascinated that that was brought up already this morning as well. One-to-one marketing never existed, and it probably never will. Highly targeted, segmented marketing, where it makes sense, absolutely exists, and we should be doing that. The same way that we always have in the world of search, right? That's really the secret of search, is that we've gotten very segmented and targeted on a keyword basis. We're taking that same thinking now and applying it to the post-click experience with what we call LXO. So let me show you a case study. Let me make this real. It's a client of ours called Blurb. Anyone familiar with Blurb? They're in San Francisco. They allow you to make your own actual physical book. Say you go to Italy and you take a bunch of pictures and you want to create a book with all these photos from your trip in it. And you can download their bookmaking tools or do it online and configure it, and they'll ship you this book in a matter of days. It's pretty incredible, and I mean, they're doing really well. But this was their initial landing page back in 2009. And you look at it and go, all right, you know, big button, call to action, big image, not so bad, but we knew we could do better. So using our user experience expertise, we redesigned a landing page form. What did we do? Well, we simplified the template dramatically, simplified the call to action. This is, by the way, was one of their many keyword themes, of course. One of the things you can use Blurb for is to make a cookbook. So this example is from their cookbook, one of their cookbook ad groups. A bigger image, process steps. Hey, how does this all really work? Big call to action. We've got some social proof quotes and publications that have talked about Blurb down here. And we got over a double, 112% lift in conversion, just from that one best practice upgrade. Not bad, right? That's round one. Round two, we iterated on that. We simplified the process steps a little bit more. We turned that single static image into a rotating set of imagery to appeal, hopefully, to more people. Simplified the language, started to pull in the word free, and changed the approach a little bit from download our awesome bookmaking tool to create your free login. And these subtle changes in language, obviously we were customizing headline as well, gave us an additional 41% lift on top of the 112 we had previously, right? That's round two. Next rev. Well, we simplify further. We changed the red background, which had been kept for branding purposes. We tested, well, let's try it without it and see if we're still on brand and we can increase performance. And we could. We shortened the process steps even more, further simplifying things for the user. And notice that use of imagery changes as well. The emphasis on the product itself, the custom book you can make, increases. Got us an additional 12%. That's off on our previous. Next round, redesign the template again. Now we got an additional 18%. Changed the button color. Oh my God, what? Orange buttons have always worked. My head's exploding, right? Further simplified the design. It's a much cleaner template. We went to tabs to answer some of the other critical questions that people have. We even put in a secondary call to action down here for those that scrolled down there. Gave us another lift, right? So, and all these increases are compounded. You probably sense where I'm going here. So we tweak on that. Now we're back to orange. Oh, thank God, orange does work, right? So we're back to the orange button. And we simplified things even more at this point. And the temptation, of course, is to seek the easy answer. Orange buttons always work. Blue buttons always work. And it's not that way. It does depend on context, has been brought up multiple times already today. Give us another 10%. Here's the really fun one. We were seeing those gains decrease somewhat, right? As you get the easy wins under your belt, there's less upside. You get smaller gains. Well, we got 31% in now our fifth round. What did we do? We rethought the entire template. We just threw everything we'd learned sort of out the door and said, let's try something radical. Let's try something totally different. So different headline treatment. We pulled their tagline back in. You actually can't, well, you can see it up there. We actually pulled in some additional elements from their header they wanted to pull back in, counter to best practices, arguably. We pulled in these examples of the different types of books you could make. Very powerful. We simplified how we referred to blurb. We moved the whole process step down here and the social proof elements there. But this was actually part of a longer scrolling page that had even more content. Again, going against best practices and this trend that we had been pursuing towards shorter, simpler, cut out as much as possible. We actually had more content and gave us a dramatic lift. So collectively, over a series of years, we had these multiple compounding sets of gains. And when you look at them individually like this, you go, yeah, all right, that's pretty solid, 40%, 18%. But when you add up the impact of all of those, it's actually a 5x lift in conversion. It is really, really powerful. And this is just a really super simplified example. It's not actually this linear. This was from one ad group. And not even our highest volume or our best performing one. In reality, it looks like this. We actually start branching out. We take what we learn in the higher volume ad groups, we propagate that out to the lower volume ones, validate that it works, and it gets pretty complicated pretty fast. But you end up with those gains. You think about taking that same type of gain and applying it across all of your ad groups, all of your channels even. You're talking about real performance gains. And it's not magic. It's doable. What's hard is figuring out the process and the people components that were talked about earlier as well. The technology is pretty straightforward. But how do you actually do this? Because it's freaking hard. Everyone's sort of on board with the idea usually, but generally people don't know how to do it. And that's where we think we've cracked the code a little bit, what we're pretty excited about. So what are your options if you want to pursue this? Well, you could do no landing page, landing experience optimization at all, and not get much business impact, but that's no fun. You could do basic, what we call best practice LPO, and you might get to that 20% gain, and it's still relatively easy for you to do. But to really pursue LXO in the way that we're talking about it and get a competitive advantage is really hard, right? And so that's where we think we've, again, sort of cracked the code on how to do this. So our solution is fully outsourced. We run your entire landing page ecosystem, basically. We run that whole show. Every aspect of it, from program strategy to design to testing to reporting to integrating with your back-end systems. We run that whole thing. Encouraging Simon when someone wants to take a picture of the slide, so I'm gonna get out of his way here. So we run that whole show. Clients love it because of the results, obviously. I showed you some examples of that. It does provide a competitive advantage, and that, again, you can start to fish in pools that you couldn't afford to play in previously. It's easy for the clients. We really do all the heavy lifting. It gives marketers control over a critical piece of their overall campaigns that usually is sort of an afterthought, this whole post-click experience. So they have control over that, and it's incredibly responsive. We've got the process in place such that you request a new landing page today, we have that up and live for you, usually a matter of days later. It can be even faster if needed. So pretty powerful, we think. What's been fun, for me, from a strategic standpoint, is looking at all the unintended benefits of the service too, in that you can use it for other channels. Once you've figured this stuff out and what works in search, these templates can easily be leveraged for display, and we've seen great success. You've got to rethink your approach a little bit creatively to mirror what you're doing with display, but it can be very powerful. Email, obviously. Mobile, the platform that we utilize allows you to deploy mobile demand capture optimization and experiences as well. So it's really powerful, and we know that that's going to be a big theme coming up. It also provides marketers a test lab to prove different UX concepts and conversion ideas in this sort of sheltered space that the CEO isn't seeing every day, right? And you prove these things work, and you've got data to support design recommendations to apply to your main site now, so you can get the benefits across your organic traffic too. That's been a huge strategic win for a lot of clients. this idea of catching problems sooner, we end up providing this unintended monitoring service for clients, as my colleague Sarah says, because we're all up in the data all the time. And what that means is we catch things sooner than our clients do. Because we'll see something trending funky all of a sudden and sense a sort of a disturbance in the force and in front of the clients and go, hey, something's wrong here. Either someone, an engineer changed a link somewhere and this flow's broken, or our tracking's broken or something. And usually it's something they weren't aware of, and we are able to troubleshoot and diagnose it faster than they would have otherwise. And it saves them a lot of time, money, headaches, and not something that, again, we intended to do going in, but it's been a cool side effect. And something that I'm passionate about, it keeps us and our clients closer to the end user. It's this really interesting form of user research. If you look at the Blurb example, the best performing creative was the one that showed people lots of different ways that they could utilize this service from Blurb. And that, like a lot of smart things, seems obvious in retrospect that that's what you would want to do. You'd want to cast as broad a net as possible and show people, here are all the ways you can use this tool. But it wasn't self-evident. And it wasn't until we tested it that we really understood that. And they've taken that knowledge now and applied it to their other forms of marketing. And we're able to leverage our expertise with user research and apply that to the designs that we develop as well. And so we're passionate about user experience generally. So who do we work with? Really a pretty wide variety from an industry standpoint, B2B and B2C. Works particularly well with lead gen, registration, subscription type sites. Can work with e-commerce as well. There's some complicating factors, but there are definitely some things we can do there. The main success factors, you've got to have a decent amount of volume in order to achieve statistical significance on these tests that we're running all the time. And a willingness to, what we call act agilely, which I'm pleased to see was another theme from this morning. You've got to be willing to trust us to some degree and allow us to deploy multiple variations of lots of different landing experiences simultaneously and test them. Clients are always able to approve everything before it goes live. But it is a different way of working than some organizations are used to. And so we always want to set that expectation up front. So that really is our presentation. We'd encourage you to play a different game, change the economics of search by looking at post-click factors. Think about managing your landing page ecosystem in the same way that you would your search campaigns on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I don't know if we have time for any questions. Anybody has any questions? Feel free to hit me up. Oh, we do have a question.
Are we live? Yeah. Wow. Just tell them who you're from.
Hi, Jennifer from Experian. Your example of the landing page test where you actually added more content, that seemed really risky. Did you actually start with, was it an A/B test 50-50, or did you start with a lower percentage?
Thank you for clarifying that. We're testing everything. So none of this is put up on a pre-post basis. It's not on a speculative basis. And where something does feel risky, yeah, we can throttle the test and try something that's more speculative down at a lower rotation. And so that one, I think we did start at 50-50. Actually, Sarah can tell me. Yes, we did. We started at 50-50. But we can run multiple iterations and split traffic more, and we've got control over those dials. But that is something that some clients do absolutely request. They're not comfortable pursuing the riskier, more aggressive options at that high a volume out of the gate sometimes. So we want to let it prove itself. And not just from a creative standpoint, but sometimes just even from a technical, making sure the technical integration is working properly too. Thank you for the question. Other questions? Yeah.
So appreciated the presentation. Results are very, very interesting. But as a search marketer, I find myself with all my time already used up, and as I think to myself how I'm going to implement another system which is going to allow me to do testing, I find myself wondering how difficult implementation would be. So when you say you have a certain amount of lift, how are you measuring that lift? Is it your own conversion system, or do you have integrations with other analytics programs?
It's a combination. So yeah, we've got our own tag on there. We're also generally looking at whatever you're using to run your SEM or other campaigns. We are generally integrating with your analytics system as well, and so we're triangulating between a few different systems. That's partially why that sort of monitoring system ends up working, is because we'll see something get out of whack, beyond our normal tolerances. Normal we'll see maybe a 6% gap between what our system and what AdWords or analytics might be telling us, and so we'll monitor that. And so if something goes outside the ranges, then we'll jump on it. But we're trying to use multiple systems and not rely just on one. And the integration piece, all that work is done up front. Once it's set up and running, it generally doesn't require additional involvement from the client side. Other questions?
We got one right here. Cool. Just if you don't mind, guys, tell us who you're from and your name. Thanks.
Mike with AKQA. How do you convince clients who have highly templatized sites where you can maybe change the image if you're lucky, and the IT department says, we don't want this, it's going to break it, especially if you guys are coming in there and taking over the incomplete experience? I feel like you've had a lot of fights, to put it delicately. So how do you get around those?
Well, let's see. There's the diplomatic answer, which is that we proceed incrementally, right? We try to boil the frog slowly. So this is the place for awkward metaphors, right? We'll maybe use an existing template so as not to ruffle feathers, but we'll say, look, guys, past experience has indicated that, yeah, customizing headlines and imagery at a minimum is going to give you guys a lift. So let's do that. Hey, it's only text, right? We ought to be able to change that, and here's some case studies that demonstrate that this should have a positive impact. Here's an image that you guys are already using elsewhere that's been approved. We think using this, image that's, already in use in place of the one that you're using in this instance would provide a lift. So we will adapt to the conditions generally within a client environment. Once we get some momentum usually, and once we start showing some gains, it gets a lot easier for us usually, because then we can push and say, what, why don't we try a new template? And everybody loves a winner. And once you've shown that you know what you're doing, you've established some credibility and showed some performance gains, it generally tends to loosen things up for us.
Lance, thank you very much. Round of applause.